Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dorsey Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio Chapter of the American Planning Association, and I am your webcast moderator. Today is Friday, March 12th, and we will hear the presentation, Legacy Businesses, Emerging Directions. For technical help during the webcast, you can type your questions in the chat box found in your GoToWebinar tool panel, and I will do my best to help you. For your content questions related to the presentation, again, just type those in that chat box, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. It would help me out if when you're asking the question, if you could just tag whoever it is that you want to answer it. That helps me speed through and organize and get everything all ready. So thanks. Coming up on your screen is a list of our sponsoring APA chapters and divisions for 2021. Thanks to all of those participating and for making these webcasts possible and free to members. Today, in particular, we are sponsored by the APA Urban Design and Preservation Division. So thanks to you for putting this together. We'll hear a little bit more about their future programming coming up here in a moment. Next up, here's a list of our upcoming webcasts. We have a lot coming down the pipeline. We're scheduling well through the summer. So head over to ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast to register for our upcoming sessions. And on our new and improved website, you'll also be able to view PDF copies of all of our sessions. There's links to all of our recordings and all that good stuff. And of course, if you're interested in hosting a session, be sure to reach out. All of our contact info is again on our webcast webpage. Today's session has been approved for 1.5 CM credits for live viewing. To log your AICP CM credits, just head over to planning.org and log into your MyAPA account. And from there, you can either search by today's title or event number, both of which can be found on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. And like us on Facebook, just search Planning Webcast and we will pop up. That's where I'll post any timely information like date or time changes for a session or when there's new sessions available to register. And we do record all of our sessions, like I mentioned. We post them up on our YouTube channel. So just head over to YouTube and search Planning Webcast and be sure to subscribe to us so that you get notified when we post a new session. And of course, you can also head over to our webcast webpage to get direct links to session recordings as well. Again, it's going to take you right to our YouTube channel. So I think that's it for my housekeeping. Again, as you come up with questions for our panelists, just type them into your chat box. And please, if you would, include the name of whoever it is you want to answer those questions. And with that, I am going to turn it over now to Kay Dennis from the Urban Design and Preservation Division, who is going to talk about some upcoming programming. So, Kay.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome from the Urban Design and Preservation Division. First, I'd like to mention to you that our next webinar will be in April, and it'll be about design thinking and utilizing hand graphics to explore ideas. This presentation will be hosted by Kona Gray, who was a fellow with the American Society of Landscape Architects and also a principal with EDSA. In July, MIT Associate Professor and author Dr. Andrei Sebsuk will host a presentation about how street commerce is intertwined with urban visions and planning goals. Dr. Sebsuk will be discussing key problems and offering innovative solutions. Our next webinar will be in September and will feature Dr. Norman Garrick, who is a professor at the University of Connecticut. He is also a former member and elected fellow of the National Board of the Congress for New Urbanism. Dr. Garrick will be presenting the concept of the 15-minute city and use Zurich, Switzerland as an example of one of the world's preeminent 15-minute cities. Today, our lead speaker is Dr. Elizabeth Morton. Dr. Morton is a planning educator and consultant specializing in urban design, historic preservation, and placemaking. She currently teaches in the Architecture Urban Sustainability Department at the University of the District of Columbia. She is presently completing a funded research project to document legacy business efforts across the country and prepare a guide for local practitioners and advocates. Working with Arlington County, Virginia partners and Virginia Tech graduate students, Dr. Morton initiated a legacy business project which compiled new information on the formation and operations of long-standing businesses and documented the stories of business owners through maps and oral histories. She is an appointed member of the Arlington County Planning Commission and is on the executive committee of APA's Urban Design and Preservation Division. She has a PhD in City Design and Development from MIT, an MCRP from UNC Chapel Hill, and a BA from Williams College. A very warm welcome to Dr. Elizabeth Morton.
Thank you very much. Am I going to share a screen now? Okay. I am not getting the prompt.
You might have to maybe minimize whatever you have on your screen. And it should pop up for you. Let me try sending it over one more time.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Did you now do you see the prompt?
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. And are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Thank you. So welcome. I would like to also welcome and say thank you to Margaret Rifkin, who helped put this together originally with me, and extend my appreciation to Kay Dennis from the division for organizing this, along with Christine. And I'm really thrilled to introduce the speakers today. I'm going to do that first before showing a few overview slides. We have with us today Richard Carrillo, who's the program manager for the San Francisco Legacy Business Program. Rick has held this role for the San Francisco Office of Small Business since 2016. Through over 13 years with the City and County of San Francisco, Rick has gained experience in neighborhood revitalization, business engagement, policy, contracts, and budgets. Before working in San Francisco, he worked for the San Diego Business Improvement District and also the North Park Main Street. He has a Master's of Arts degree in Geography from San Diego State University. We will then next hear from Shannon Shea Miller, who's the director of the San Antonio Office of Historic Preservation and also the city's Historic Preservation Officer. She oversees the city's Legacy Business Program, which as she'll note is the second formal program in the United States after San Francisco, which is a component of their Living Heritage Initiative, which I hope we hear more about. Prior to her position with San Antonio, Ms. Miller was a historic preservation officer in Franklin, Tennessee and Fort Worth, Texas. She has master's degrees in both historic preservation and public service and administration. And then we'll hear from Pardis Safari. She's been with the city of Cambridge for over 13 years, and she's currently the Senior Economic Development Manager. She oversees the implementation of the city's retail strategic plan, which won the APA 2019 Donald E. Hunter Award for Excellence in Economic Development. And she includes in her portfolio developing new programs such as a Legacy Business Luncheon, vacant storefront initiatives, and more. Before her position with the City of Cambridge, she served in a variety of senior economic development and planning roles. Following these representatives, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of a study that Kay mentioned that I've been doing of legacy businesses across the United States. We will convene with some lessons learned from the city representatives that you have with you, and then we will open it up to Christina for moderating some Q&A. So before we begin, some of you may be wondering, what is a legacy business? And as we'll discuss, there are many different conceptions of what that means. Does it have something to do with age? Is it something to do with the size, the contribution to the community? But we will hear, in general, cities and a variety of actors, including nonprofits and economic development agencies, have been trying to think of ways to retain long-standing independent businesses that contribute to community character and vitality. So why do we care about this? Why is it important? I think the pandemic right now has demonstrated to us just how important some of these community institutions are. I imagine I'm not alone in thinking about visiting some of these as soon as the pandemic lifts. These institutions often provide a sense of place to communities. And this concept in general, I came at this topic out of my interest in cultural heritage, and it just builds on so much good work that's going on right now that talks about, in general, the need to both research and document a more inclusive community narrative. I'm giving a few citations here, not to make it too academic, but this will be in my notes section. And trying to address what's been called a diversity deficit in terms of the range of stories that we're hearing from. These businesses, as I think you'll especially hear from Shannon, often represent intangible or vernacular heritage, which aren't always easy to incorporate into a traditional historic preservation program. Finally, the history of commercial resources is often understudied. I'm right now part of a panel for the Transportation Research Board that's trying to provide guidance for a national study about how do we document, research, perhaps protect the abundance of resources, commercial resources that have been built between 1945 and 1980. These don't always fit into our paradigm of historic preservation. And finally, this idea that economic vitality and social sustainability are intertwined. That's a consistent theme of these legacy business efforts that we'll be talking about today. So that's it for my presentation. I'm really happy to turn it over to Rick. Just a couple of words before he starts about his program. In doing this study, nearly everybody mentioned San Francisco. It's a really interesting idea, concept of idea dissemination in planning across the country. And as he'll note, this really built on seminal reports and initiatives from the advocacy group San Francisco Heritage. And I think his presentation also provides a screenshot of the report that they've done. So without further ado, I know we're all really looking forward to hearing from Rick, whose program is the envy of the country in San Francisco. And here you go.
Thank you, Dr. Morton. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Perfect.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Richard Carrillo, Program Manager for the Legacy Business Program in San Francisco. I'm excited to tell you about the history and features of our program. The Legacy program is housed in the Office of Small Business, serving the needs of the city's small businesses. We also have the Small Business Assistance Center, an online business portal, and the Accessible Business Entrance Program to make businesses more accessible for the disabled population. I always thought that the increase in commercial rents in San Francisco after the Great Recession was the impetus behind the creation of the Legacy Business Program. But in preparing for this presentation, I learned there was a slightly different origin. But do keep this chart in mind because you can see the rents after the market crash in 2008 really went through the roof. In 2012, the Gold Dust Lounge, a bar founded in 1965 in Union Square, was threatened with eviction by its landlords. As part of their strategy to remain in the space, the bar owners tried to get historic landmark status for the inside of the building. That effort failed, and the bar was evicted and moved to Fisherman's Wharf. Ongoing threats to local institutions underscored the need to develop new strategies for protecting places with intangible cultural significance. Mike Bueller from San Francisco Heritage read an article in the New York Times about the Legacy Business Program in Buenos Aires and thinking about what could be done after the Gold Dust Lounge eviction. They created in 2013 in January a first of its kind interactive online guide called Legacy Bars and Restaurants to honor and promote those establishments that reflect the history and culture of San Francisco, including some of San Francisco's most legendary eateries, watering holes, dives, and haunts. Located throughout the city, these businesses have achieved longevity of over 40 years or more, possess distinctive architecture or interior design, and or contribute to a sense of history in the surrounding neighborhood. Legacy Bars and Restaurants documented the city's vast culinary heritage and promoted businesses that do not necessarily qualify for formal historic designation. By June 2014, SF Heritage had inducted a total of 100 businesses into their Legacy Bars and Restaurants initiative. In September 2014, SF Heritage published Sustaining San Francisco's Living History, which they discussed strategies for conserving cultural heritage assets. They were inspired by legacy programs in global cities such as Buenos Aires, Barcelona, and London. By now, if you remember that chart, businesses were being threatened in droves by escalating rents. So in October 2014, the city's budget and legislative analyst conducted an analysis of small business displacement. Supervisor David Campos championed the Legacy Project. If you remember, if you know, San Francisco is a city and a county, so we have a board of supervisors instead of a city council. And he was a member of the board of supervisors. In March 2015, the Legacy Business Registry was born through a city ordinance by the board of supervisors. Happy 6th anniversary. In November of that year, the approval of Proposition J on the ballot created a Legacy Business Historic Preservation Fund that created 2 grant programs that I'll discuss in greater detail. On July 5th, 2016, I was hired as a Legacy Business Program Manager, and it's been nonstop ever since, keeping me very busy. For those that are not familiar, the Legacy Business Program recognizes that long-standing community-serving businesses are cultural assets. The program provides educational and promotional assistance to legacy businesses to encourage their continued viability and success. Legacy businesses are also eligible to apply for grants through the Preservation Fund. Legacy business is a business that has been nominated by the mayor or a member of the Board of Supervisors, and that the Small Business Commission, after a noticed hearing, has determined each of the following 3 criteria. Number 1, the business has operated in San Francisco for 30 years or more with no break-in SF operations exceeding 2 years. There is an exception for businesses that are 20 years old or older if they face a significant risk of displacement. Number 2, the business has contributed to the neighborhood's history and or the identity of a particular neighborhood or community. And number 3, the business is committed to maintaining the physical features or traditions that define the business, including craft, culinary, or art forms. The registration process includes a letter of nomination, to the Office of Small Business, application submittal to the office, a $50 application fee, application review and completion by me working with the applicant, planning department review for 30 days, a recommendation by the Historic Preservation Commission, and final hearing and decision by the Small Business Commission. Requiring a letter of nomination from the mayor or a member of the Board of Supervisors has actually been a remarkable way to keep the mayor and the board engaged. I don't know whose idea it was, but I think it was just brilliant. So they are often very excited about nominating businesses, and they're really engaged in who's being added to the registry. Most nominators, however, do want to see a completed application before writing a letter. So I encourage applicants to seek a promise of a letter before applying. Legislation allows for up to 300 nominations per year. Typically, though, we've only added about 50 to 60 businesses to the registry because it's a very time-consuming process. So 50 to 60 seems to be manageable for everybody. There's no limit on the number of nominations that can be made by the mayor or an individual member of the Board of Supervisors, and we did include nonprofit organizations in our legacy business registry. The application is available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Tagalog. Section 1, the business applicant information, and we have it as a writable PDF, and electronic signatures are acceptable. Section 2 of the business locations, they include the address, the starting year, the ending year of a particular location if applicable. They could be headquartered outside of San Francisco, but they can have no break in San Francisco operations exceeding 2 years. Section 3 is the disclosure statement, and included in that is that the business cannot owe money to the city before it's added to the registry. So they need to make sure that they handle all of that beforehand. Section 4, this is the most challenging part of the application. It's the written historic narrative. We created a Q&A template, and it's available to all applicants, and we ask that they keep it in Q&A format. And we do provide free assistance with narratives through the San Francisco Small Business Development Center. But it is a little challenging. They can be 7-8 pages of Q&A, but it's actually the most rewarding part of the application when it's complete. And they're always a work of art. And when I edit these narratives and work with them to finish it, it creates a strong bond between me and the applicants, which is really great. And so by the time their application is done, we're really bonded, and it's a really fantastic way to establish a relationship with all the businesses. Section 5 is the supplemental historical documents. We add to the application any ownership documents, any history, photographs, current and historical, news articles, letters of support, political commendations. We can actually find a lot of this on the internet, so this is not as difficult as it seems. Moving on to components of the Legacy Business Program, I often say there are 4 components to the program: marketing and promotion, business assistance, grants, and legislation. Marketing includes logo and branding, which we've done quite a lot of in the last couple of years. In 2018, we hired Osaki Creative Group, who designed our logo, brand book, marketing toolkit, certificates, bronze plaques, window clings, stickers, postcards, a website design, letterhead, business cards, envelopes, more. They do quite a lot. This is our logo, and you can see there's a hidden gem in our logo that doesn't initially jump out at you, but once I tell you about it, you won't be able to unsee it. If you look at the flame, if you haven't seen it already, the letters are SF for San Francisco. And I don't even think all of our legacy businesses know that. And I'm pleased to announce that as of yesterday evening, I kid you not, we have a new website for the Legacy Business Registry. It is www.legacybusiness.org. I know the legacy businesses don't know about this because they know it's in development, but I'm announcing it here. First, you're hearing it before even the legacy businesses themselves hear about it. It was designed by Osaki Creative Group, and it was implemented by Design Media. They've been really fantastic in making this happen by today. So we're going to be building on this foundation. It's only got a few web pages now, but a really fantastic directory. And we're going to be adding services to the program and web pages to the website. So check it out, legacybusiness.org. We also have bronze plaques planned for this year. They're designed by Osaki Creative Group, and they're going to be manufactured and installed by Priority Architectural Graphics. That's marketing. Moving on, for business assistance, we work really closely with the San Francisco Small Business Development Center. They provide assistance with registry applications, technical assistance, one-on-one consulting, assistance with grants, and assistance for businesses affected by construction or fires. For grants, the voters approved the Historic Preservation Fund in November 2015, which consisted of 2 grant programs, the Rent Stabilization Grant and the Business Assistance Grant. Important thing to note is that Proposition J did not create a dedicated source of funding. So we have depended on the mayor to provide us with funds from the general fund. We've been getting $1 million a year, but we're not certain if we will be able to get that full $1 million next fiscal year. The Rent Stabilization Grant is an incentive for landlords to provide long-term leases to legacy businesses. It's the landlords themselves that apply for the grant. The grant pays up to $4.50 per square foot, up to 5,000 square feet. So 22,500 maximum. We accept grant applications year round, and we add a biennial CPI. So we have CPI 3.1% and 3.6% so far, and another one that will be added this July. The business assistance grant is for legacy businesses. They apply themselves for the grant. Paid, past tense, up to $500 per full-time, meant to put the word equivalent in there, equivalent employee, up to 100 employees maximum. So 1 FTE would be $500, 100 FTEs, which is the maximum, $50,000. And again, the same biennial CPI. Due to financial constraints related to the coronavirus pandemic, the business assistance grant was not available in this fiscal year. I'll tell you a little bit more about the grant. It was quite difficult to administer because payroll reports were needed to verify the data, which were extremely time consuming to review. Also, there was no time limit to how many years a business could apply. So there were more and more applicants as we got more and more legacy businesses. And so the 2 grants quickly exceeded the $1 million budget that we were allocated. So we prioritized the Rent Stabilization Grant over the Business Assistance Grant. And slowly we ran out of money for the Business Assistance Grant. So that is effectively over after 4 years. However, the Office of Small Business is capable of administering other grants that might come our way for legacy businesses if funds are made available. And my long-term goal is to establish a dedicated source of funding for legacy grants. I'm kind of eyeing 2024 right now, when maybe our economy is just a little bit stronger and people are more willing to look at creating new funding sources. So stay tuned. Lastly, legislation is a great way to provide benefits to legacy businesses and landlords who rent to them. We have a lot of ideas that we hope to work on over the next 10 years. Things like permit streamlining, more commercial condominium development, selling commercial condominiums directly to legacy businesses, doing historic preservation protections in commercial districts, which lessens gentrification pressure. Down payment assistance for legacy business, city ownership of property, where the city purchases property and does rent-to-own scenarios with legacy businesses. Personally, if I was developing a legacy business program in a city, I would certainly try some of these legislative efforts. I think these are probably easier to do than the grants. So yeah, we'll be actually working on these and very excited about it. And as I mentioned, our typical budget is $1 million for grants that we've been getting through the general fund and $20,400 for program expenses, including marketing, bronze plaques, and branded office supplies. Lastly, our annual reports contain a lot of information and can be found on the Office of Small Business website, www.sfosb.org. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. The next presenter is Shannon Shea Miller from San Antonio. Let's see if I can get over to that. I'm having a little bit of difficulty.
I was able to do it from my end. No worries, Rick.
Great, thank you.
Shannon, you should have that pop-up message now.
Yes.
Looks good.
Do you see my presentation?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, and thanks so much for inviting me to participate today. I will provide a quick overview of our legacy business program here in San Antonio. Our program is really designed around acknowledging that the long-lived San Antonio businesses and their importance to our kind of cultural heritage in our city, and really advance what makes San Antonio unique. And as a result, it is administered within our Living Heritage Division of the Office of Historic Preservation and is managed by our cultural historian. The program is actually one of the outcomes of our first Living Heritage Symposium, which was held in 2017, and we invited Mike Bueller and others from the San Francisco team behind their program to present at the Living Heritage Symposium. And it really revealed that a program like this would be a best practice for sustaining businesses that add to the historic character of San Antonio. And in fact, part of the reason that we started the Living Heritage Symposium in the first place was due to the loss of a longtime legacy business called the Malt House. And the fact that it was obvious that landmark designation alone, which this building was designated as a landmark, was not sufficient to save the business. And so we wanted to try to address those challenges that business owners were having, and then also think through appropriate treatment of historic resources when architectural significance wasn't why they were recognized. In the case of the Malt House, it was not an architecturally significant building at all. It was designated because of its cultural significance as a legacy business. The program really celebrates businesses that contribute to the culture and economy of San Antonio. This is a photo of the Elizondo flower shop that was opened in 1921 with their councilwoman from the district where the business is located. The business is also really about helping communities leverage our living heritage for economic prosperity. And so it works to achieve goals of making preservation equitable and recognize that preservation isn't just about buildings. It must focus on people, and that we must recognize that our cultural vitality and our future success as a city, as a still growing vital city, is really dependent on these businesses that reflect our unique culture through their goods or services or products or even location. This is the Bollner's Meat Market, which is also actually was started in 1914, still in the same family, and they are with their councilwoman from their council district. And these photos, many of the photos that you'll see in the presentation, actually come from the launch of our program. We worked with each council office to identify a legacy business in their district, and then we had photos taken. And I think you'll see as we go through the pride that's really exhibited in these photos from the families and from the council members. So our criteria, generally legacy businesses are 20 years of age or older, but exceptions are made, and they also are one or more of the following things. They're owned by generations of the same family, so showing passing through the family over time. They're providers of authentic goods or services that are tied to San Antonio's culture, kind of cultivators or sustainers of certain San Antonio traditions, Also, they can be eligible if they're located in a historic district or in a historic landmark, or if they're eligible to be designated as a historic landmark. So essentially, we're seeking businesses owned by successive generations of the same family that perpetuate San Antonio's authenticity. Examples of goods and services like piñata makers or boot makers, or a business that cultivates traditions like instruction or education or handing down of traditional ways of knowledge, like folk dance instructors or song instruction. And so it's really important that we kind of highlight these traditions that make San Antonio special. And again, it's all with an eye toward really helping our communities leverage that living heritage for prosperity, and help to, you know, kind of perpetuate the business and the historic service that is provided. This is actually our very first official legacy business, called Del Bravo Records. They've been in business since 1966, still very much a part of the Tejano music genre in San Antonio, and it's a gathering place for the community in that district. The benefits associated with the program for us, I mean, there are many. Some of the things are similar to the San Francisco program. We do have like decals. You can see a decal in this photo for window decals. Every business gets a signed certificate from their district council person. They also get kind of, you know, a draft press release and tips for hosting an event to announce their inclusion as a legacy business. They also get public recognition by the city through a hearing at the Historic and Design Review Commission, marketing and promotion from our office and from the city at large, the general city kind of social media accounts and things like that. We also have like special events highlighting legacy businesses, and a number of things like maps and tours. And, you know, a lot of times we're asked by conferences that come to town to help with tours, and so we've done several that are tours specifically of legacy businesses, which the businesses love. We also have a toolkit that we've launched this year for legacy businesses that include some technical assistance, 2 sessions of architectural design advice, succession planning training. We have some businesses that are really have been really successful in thinking about their succession planning and feel very passionate about it, and so they kind of coach others, and we do at least once a year a succession planning training. We also have free legal advice, 2 sessions, and then a social media marketing kit that includes a promotional video, you know, a short little like 30-second kind of thing that helps promote each legacy business that then we share through the city networks, but then also they're able to share and help promote their business. And we also help consult about special events. This is a photo of the website that shows our legacy businesses. You can see that we have them kind of organized in categories based on the type of business. And so you can search by category. You can obviously look in the map and search by location. And then there are photos and history associated with each of the legacy businesses. Also, here's an example of a tour map that we did. And in this particular case, everybody when you went to the legacy business, there was some either like special deal or free gift or discount or something like that. So it really helped encourage people to shop or participate in whatever it was that the legacy business produces. And then of course, social media. We do a lot of social media, and I also mentioned the launch that we did with council members where they picked a legacy business in their district, and on the left you see the poster that was generated. This was done during Preservation Month, and it's funny because we still see these posters hanging all over City Hall today. The council members are very proud of them, which is another really great way to keep elected officials invested. Our program is celebratory. We don't regulate the businesses in any way. We also don't guarantee any financial incentives. We did have a grant program pre-COVID that was tied to legacy businesses in our World Heritage Buffer area, because San Antonio Missions are a World Heritage site, but it was not a citywide grant program. We definitely have a desire to have a grant program, but obviously COVID has sort of slowed that discussion down, but it is definitely still on the horizon. And then, kind of next steps for us are really thinking about how to recognize other types of people that may not be obvious. Like one example that we always use are master craftsmen. It may not be their business, it may literally be their skill. And so kind of recognizing different types of craftsmen as legacy craftsmen tied to the legacy business program. Also looking at potential like tax credits or tax abatements, which are not straight up grants, but could help by reducing city tax liability. So definitely always kind of thinking about ways that we can enhance the program to encourage more people to become a part of it. And with that, I think, yeah, that's the end of my presentation. And so I'm gonna pass it on to our next presenter, Pardis.
I'm Pardis Safari. I'm with the City of Cambridge, and I think after the presentations you've already seen today, I'll hopefully give you some insight of how you can start your program. So just to provide a little bit of background on the City of Cambridge and the Community Development Department, economic development is housed in our Community Development Department that includes our other 4 different programmatic divisions, including community planning, housing, environmental transportation planning, and zoning and development. And just a little bit about Cambridge, because we are smaller than San Francisco and San Antonio. We have a little over 110,000 people located in 6.4 square miles. And we have, as I'm sure hopefully folks know, some world-renowned educational institutions, Harvard and MIT. And with that, we've developed into quite an international community with over 27% of our residents being foreign-born, representing over 70 countries and speaking more than 40 different languages. So just a little bit about us in the division and many of the things I'll be discussing are programs that are available to all businesses in Cambridge and legacy businesses especially. We have a variety of different grant programs and we just finished up a whole variety of COVID-related grant programs, but we have grant programs with our small business enhancement program, which is helping to reduce, to help develop any interior needs into the business. We have a coaching program similar to some of the programs that I think San Francisco and San Antonio mentioned, which is legal coaching, marketing assistance, and what have you. We have a whole series of workshops. We provide counseling and technical assistance. And we help with our commercial districts because we have over 7 different commercial districts in the city. One specific grant program besides the small business enhancement program I wanted to mention is our storefront improvement program, which is available to property owners or tenants. And it provides financial assistance to renovate and restore commercial building facades. So we work closely with our Disabilities and Historical Commission on these projects as needed. And it really works, it's a really great opportunity for business owners as well as the property owners to renovate storefronts and especially any historical characteristics that need improvement on the outside. So with that, just our program is very different and very small in comparison to San Francisco and San Antonio. We started a program in 2019. It came from an idea from our mayor at the time, as well as small business association representatives and staff. One of our biggest challenges when starting this program, and still is finding data when each of our small businesses in Cambridge is opened. But we were able to develop a database of over 760 small businesses. And similar to San Francisco, we are keeping track of nonprofits as well. Our database includes years opened, the current address of the business, and then the commercial district they're currently in. And in our inaugural year, we celebrated our businesses during National Small Business Week with a Small Business Legacy Business Luncheon. We celebrated businesses in all of our commercial districts that year in the luncheon. We included some favorite types of businesses, such as the oldest women-owned bed and breakfast, our oldest local bank, our oldest bookstore, vintage store, and family-owned pub, to name a few. In addition to the luncheon during National Small Business Week, we collaborated with our historical commission using Instagram and other cities' social media to showcase old photos of our legacy businesses. And at the luncheon, each business received a photo with the mayor and the city manager and received a certificate from the city. And so unlike other municipalities like San Francisco, we're quite limited by state law in developing tax incentives, abatements, or other financial incentives for local or legacy businesses. However, we do provide the grants I had mentioned earlier, especially our storefront improvement program, to help improve historical storefront features and really encourage our legacy businesses to participate in those programs. I did want to mention, as Elizabeth had mentioned, COVID has obviously impacted a lot of our commercial districts throughout the country. We've been fortunate enough that over 255 businesses that have been in business for over 25 years or more in the city of Cambridge, only 5 have had to close due to the pandemic. And of those, two businesses have looked to sell. And thankfully, one of them have already been bought. And just as a fun fact, the photo you see here is one of our first legacy businesses that received an award at the luncheon in 2019. It's Levitt and Pierce in Harvard Square, and it's the city's oldest continuing business, and it was founded in 1895. So we're learning a lot from San Francisco and San Antonio on things that we can do to elevate our budding legacy program. We also plan to develop a website with past and present awardees. We are looking to expand our database with some type of form or nomination form similar to what you've heard from San Francisco and San Antonio. And we plan on verifying businesses that have been in business for 25 years or more. We also plan on expanding our marketing and promotions through continuing our legacy business luncheon during National Small Business Week, as well as providing website decals and icons similar to the San Francisco model. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, are you there? Oh, there we go.
Okay. I would like to conclude by talking a bit about the memo that I'm developing for APA I'm still refining this, and I'm really hoping that this webinar gives me some new material. I've been trying to document other city programs specifically and have been interviewing people across the country about what's working and how their programs are operating. I'm going to quickly show a couple of slides. I'm here summarizing programs besides what you've just heard about that I've managed to find. An interesting component of the whole legacy business concept is the variety of ways that people are defining what a legacy business is. And perhaps this is because it means something different in different communities. So you see there are communities that are defining it just in terms of age. Some define legacy businesses in terms of a specific contribution that a business makes to the environment. Some are only allowed in certain areas, like the Great Streets program, for example, in Washington, D.C. And you can see the minimum age ranges in the programs that I found from 10 years in Seattle to 50 years. And what I've seen generally hovers around 25 years. In addition to what you've heard already from these three cities, I've been looking at what kinds of benefits are being provided for legacy businesses. San Francisco is far and away the most generous and has the largest budget. I think that Pardesa's program is pretty typical in that it's a recognition program, and many cities are, at least as a baseline, starting with that. I think all of us in planning know that often a policy starts with a sort of information and education campaign to try to test the waters, engage public support. Maybe later on, it could graduate to provision of technical assistance or grants. So this is just sort of a range of what people that I found are offering to legacy businesses. Again, mostly publicity, but as Shannon talked about providing technical assistance, I was interested in talking to Seattle to see the range of assistance that they've developed. Talking to one local government, they said in polling businesses, they said the last thing we need is a plaque. You know, we really like to see something that's going to help us. So again, what's interesting to me is that some of these programs come out of economic development, some come out of historic preservation, and sometimes these two agencies are working together, and sometimes they're working pretty independently. I do want to stress that although what I've been looking at is municipal programs, that many times, like in San Francisco, the impetus is coming from a nonprofit advocacy group. These are just programs that I saw established since 2019. Seattle also, I believe that program really was catalyzed by a nonprofit organization trying to expose the loss of a lot of longstanding legacy businesses. I'll point to Los Angeles in particular as a really robust and exciting program with an extensive website. So I encourage you to check that out. I have found also recently, speaking of COVID, that some cities have used the legacy business concept to funnel enhanced funding for COVID-19 relief. You see here in North Miami, as far as I could tell, this was the first time they really had a legacy business program, and recognizing the special concerns and needs of longstanding businesses. Similarly, in Austin, when you think about Austin, I know you think probably about bars and live music performance and restaurants. So Austin also is channeling some money specifically as a little bit of enhancement for legacy businesses. I'll talk just for a minute about a pilot program that I did with graduate students here in Arlington, Virginia. Like many of the communities that we've discussed, Arlington, Virginia is a community that experiences a lot of growth pressure. We are a suburb of Washington, D.C., if you're not familiar. And we worked to document a couple of neighborhoods that were sort of poised for growth, what's called the Lee Highway corridor in the Green Valley neighborhood, a historically African-American neighborhood. Again, we don't have a program here in Arlington formally, but I've been pleased to see some of the material that we developed with the students about these sort of undersung community resources into some of the planning and inventory for the future of Lee Highway. I wanted to just pause for a minute and note, we tend to think of these legacy businesses as bars and restaurants and these kind of third places that we're all accustomed to. But in interviewing people, it was really striking to realize the contributions that barbershops, I think we're familiar with, appliance stores, frame shops, all of these really touch our lives in important ways. And it was very interesting to explore the stories through oral histories. I'll just, in my last slide, want to point out one of the meaningful things that I think we did in exploring legacy businesses in Arlington is these oral histories. And I think it was particularly meaningful for the younger generation to stand in the business, observe how they're operating, hear them having a conversation about their history and also conversation with their customers. So we developed an interactive website. The transcripts of those oral histories are in our county Center for Local History. And I did have a student develop a radio show using this material that we found through the oral histories. And so that lives on as a nice asset for the community. The panelists compiled some lessons learned, and I wonder if, Christine, you can you make it so we're all able to come up and discuss?
Yep, everyone just go ahead and turn your webcams back on. Perfect.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to sort of try to moderate this. This was something that people collectively developed in the few minutes that we've got. One of the issues that we talked about was the sometimes the complexity of finding out information about simple things like how old is a business. So I know that Pardis had something to contribute about this.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. So we took a lot of time, especially intern time, trying to gather this data because not everyone keeps, business owners don't keep records. And even anecdotally talking to our own city clerk's office, which manages our business certificates, I found that state law prohibits them from keeping old certificates, so they just get thrown away every 7 years. So, I would just recommend if this is something you're looking into, making sure maybe your city maintains this electronically, or there is some historic information. And one thing I think why we're turning towards maybe like a registration similar to San Francisco is so that we can compile that data in a more accurate way from the business owners. So that is just one tidbit I would recommend for businesses, for municipalities looking at a legacy business program.
Anyone else want to chime in about that? We had talked about the fact that sometimes people's memories don't match the historical record, which can be a difficult conversation to have in terms of what year were you really started. So.
Yeah, in San Francisco, it's been a bit of a challenge because the city updated their business registration database, and the old database is not accessible, and they even have a hard time accessing the data. So we have to depend on businesses providing us with old business licenses if they have it, or newsletter articles, newspaper articles, things that we can find on the internet. And sometimes it's a real challenge. It can be a real struggle.
Okay. The other big issue that we've already alluded to is, what is your definition of legacy business going to be? A couple of you mentioned nonprofits, chains. I think, Pardis, you used this phrase with me, a chainlet. Is that right? You have
Yeah.
the difference between a
Um,
chainlet. So do you want to expand on that?
Sure. We will continue to include nonprofits in ours, but a chainlet is something that was once described to us by a consultant that we often use, which is a business that has more, that's considered local, but has more than one location within Cambridge proper, or maybe has a location for those folks familiar with the area in like Cambridge and Somerville. But doesn't have multiple locations. So in Cambridge zoning, we consider anyone with 10 or more locations in Massachusetts as a formula business or a chain. So that's those smaller chainlets we would include, but a location, a business has more than 10 locations probably would not be considered.
Great. Shannon or Rick, do you want to chime in?
Sure. We actually don't like specifically exclude anything. So, it could be a nonprofit, it could be a chainlet, as long as they meet the other criteria, we don't exclude any category.
We don't exclude chains either. They could apply if they wanted. We do have some big businesses with their local ones, like Anchor Brewing, and we have Boudin Bakery. But if a chain wanted to apply, they could. They would just have to show how they've contributed to the city. We did create a rule that said if there's a franchise, let's say the owner of the franchise had just 3 of those franchises in San Francisco, only those 3, their ownership would have to be the same. Only those 3 would get added to the registry. We wouldn't add all of them in the city. So we do look at the ownership for any kind of franchise businesses.
Great. Maybe sticking with Rick, I think you were the one who had this idea, and you're the one with the big budget. Do you want to talk a bit about the grant and incentive program? I know you've alluded to some difficulty in maintaining the level of funding, and the fact, I know we've talked about the sort of exponential increase the more businesses that you add. Do you want to add something about this bullet?
Sure. Actually, if you go into Registrar, that all the San Francisco legislation is on there. You can go to search legacy in 2015, and you can look at some of the earlier versions of the legislation. And they were actually going to be doing some sort of tax break for legacy businesses and their property owners. But that evolved over the time that they were developing that legislation into the grant program that we see. So the grant, the business assistance grant, was very challenging. And as I mentioned, they didn't have a rule that limited the number of years that a business could apply. So if you actually look at some of the articles that came out in the newspapers right before the November 2015 ballot initiative, you'll see that they were very apprehensive about the program. The press was saying, oh, there's going to be up to 300 legacy businesses a year, and they're each going to be getting $50,000. It's not, they weren't quite accurate about that, but they were adding it up, and over 20 years it's going to be $94 million. So we didn't quite add as many legacy businesses as were allowed. We don't go to the full 300, but even just adding 50 or 60 a year really made the grant difficult to fund and difficult to manage, and very quickly spiraled. But we saw that early on. We saw that before we even started, before I even got hired, actually. I said there's problems with these 2 funds, and I can tell you what those are, and I can help you guide you through them and develop a program that goes beyond that one grant in particular. So yeah, so we were very aware of that going into it, and we've actually developed an alternative grant that, if we get funding, would be easier for us to manage and would have time limits for the businesses as well. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but we made it through, and we have plans to do some better stuff in the future.
Okay, finally, be creative about public engagement strategies. I know a lot of programs have a crowdsourced component, for example, I think including some of yours, where people can nominate what they feel should be considered a legacy business. And you've talked about some other really creative public engagement strategies. Anyone want to chime in about that?
I mean, we definitely encourage crowdsourcing. I mean, it's a definite part of our promotional activity is promoting the existing legacy businesses, but then asking for people to suggest others. And then, I mentioned some of our toolkit things include assistance with social media marketing and producing a video for each business and some of those kinds of things, just to really help the businesses promote themselves as well.
Wonderful. I have a thank you slide, but I think I'm supposed to turn it over to Christine to moderate some Q&A.
Got it. I had myself muted. Need to heed my own advice about that. Folks, if you have questions, just type them in the chat box in your GoToWebinar tool panel. We'll see if we can get to them. So the first question, Shannon, can you share the website with the map of the legacy businesses in San Antonio? Oh, you're muted. No.
Yes, it's on our larger discovery map, and really the fastest way to get to it is just go to sapreservation.com, and there's a link on the very opening page.
Okay, perfect.
We do have a business directory on our new website where people can search by business type, and they can search by neighborhood.
And I think we might have a minute for Rick to, we have a couple questions here, but then I think we might have a minute if you want to give us a tour of your new website here in a minute. This question is, can a business change locations and maintain their legacy business status? Also, does the designation require then some kind of renewal?
I can start with that. Yes, they can definitely move. They can even change their name a little bit. We like to have them keep the name similar, but they can grow and evolve and move and change owners. But they don't need to do a renewal, but we did just recently create, if there's a new business owner, an acknowledgement form so that we can engage the new business owner.
Anyone else?
No, ours is about the same. I mean, one of our criteria is if you're located in a historic district or a historic landmark. So obviously if the business relocates to where that no longer applies, then it could be an issue, but there's nothing that necessarily prohibits relocation.
Okay. This one is for Richard. What is the purpose or intent behind requiring or encouraging development of commercial condominiums?
So buildings are very expensive in San Francisco. We'd like to encourage the businesses to purchase their buildings as much as possible. But since the buildings can be multiple millions of dollars, we thought if we had more commercial condominiums that they could just buy their space instead of buying the building. So that's the intent behind that.
Okay, thank you. This question, we have some businesses like auto body shops and repair shops that are family owned, local, long-standing. how have you handled this type of business that's auto oriented? Or is it treated the same as anything else?
In San Francisco, we treat it the same as everything else. We just added an auto body shop to our registry maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
We have a wide range of everything from automotive to retail, restaurants, bars, manufacturers, nonprofits, you name it.
Okay. This is a big picture question for everyone. How has your respective legacy programs affected parking, transit, traffic, transportation needs, planning in general? Has it affected it in any way?
I wouldn't say, oh, sorry, Richard, go ahead.
I'd say no in San Francisco. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. If anything, I did enjoy the fact that one legacy business awardee was hoping it would give them a level up in certain things, but for ours, it's a it's a celebration. It's a promotion of their business. It's not intended to make them be favored in one way or another over certain programs the city's offering.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say no. I mean, we do use legacy business designation as a way, like sometimes to create eligibility for city programs, like other like small business assistance and things like that that we don't control. Legacy businesses are a way to help people qualify for that type of assistance or something like that. But I don't think I can't think of an example with related to like transportation or parking or anything like that.
Okay.
Rick, do you want to mention the beer garden example? I thought that was a nice that you talked about, where I think it was the planning commission was considering the impact of a project on a legacy business.
That is true. So getting on the registry does create visibility for legacy businesses, and they do use that to their advantage, and we encourage them to do that. But first of all, we advocate for them whenever needed. But there was a legacy business. There is a legacy business called Zeitgeist, and across the street, they have a big beer garden that's outside. Across the street, they were going to build a 5 or 6 story building, and that would have blocked the afternoon sunlight for the beer garden, and that was a problem. So they, said we're a legacy business, and we would hope that we can maybe lower the property by 1 story so that we would have our afternoon sunlight, and that extra visibility helped them make the argument, and we find that it helps a lot of the businesses just in general when they need to advocate for themselves, that they can say they're a legacy business. It's been really helpful for them.
In what ways could smaller cities implement legacy business policies that don't necessarily have the budget for grants or designated staff for implementation? If there's like 1 or 2 things that a community could do that might make a big impact, what would that be?
I mean, legacy business is not the only thing I do. So I think I'm a prime example of what is feasible. I think, if there's an opportunity, maybe through a collaboration with the historical commission or other, departments or organizations, local organizations, there are ways to just do celebratory efforts and promotions, similar to what Rich and Shannon do in their prospective municipalities. I mean, we are starting small. We had a luncheon. We captured the oldest businesses in a variety of our different neighborhoods, and it was well received. So I think there are things you can do on a very cheap, low budget level to continue to help promote your local legacy businesses.
Well, and I'm a big proponent of the whole kind of fake it till you make it approach. Like sometimes you just have to start somewhere, and that's really what we did. Like we brought people in to learn more about the San Francisco program, which is clearly a model in the United States, and then we just said, okay, let's do it. We have a legacy business program, and You know, we presented it to city council and everybody thought it was great, and we just started doing it. And I think that's so important sometimes. Is I think a lot of times, especially in local government, we tend to overthink and make things more complicated than it needs to be. And we just dove in.
Yeah, I mean, just from this presentation I learned a lot, and I'm going to go back and watch Shannon's presentation again, because the next step after the website now is we're going to try to build up our, promotional program, and I think that's what I would do if I was in a smaller city, didn't have a big budget. So yeah, I think I'm going to definitely be looking at what San Antonio is doing, and hopefully we can implement some of those ideas here in San Francisco.
To that, Richard, can I give you controls back and you can give us a quick tour of your new website? Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. I have it up.
Let's do that real quick. I want to see this. Okay, I just sent you those controls.
So you should be able to see.
Yep.
Can you see? All right. So yep, this is our homepage. We have a few revolving pictures here. We have a daily spotlight business. And then we have the map, and we have this map just kind of go to our registry, which is the next page here. But you can see we have all our businesses here listed by business type, which is really exciting. And then they can search those business types here. And all the businesses that come up in that type are here. And then if you wanted to even do business type by neighborhood, you can do that. Yeah, it's really exciting that we have these capabilities. This all ties into our database. So I just enter data into my database. It's a Salesforce database, and then the website reads all that data, which is fantastic. If you click a business, then a pop-up comes up. I'm trying to think of one that has a description and a picture. So you can see here comic experience, and they have 2 locations. If there's no picture or no description, it still pops up with just the map and the basic data. So that's really exciting. And then we have some about information and how to become a legacy business, which brings you to the Office of Small Business website, and then contact information. What we're going to do is we're just going to have this website for the registry, and if people want to become a legacy business, they'll go over to, the Office of Small Business site, which is here, and I have a legacy business menu item with things about the grants and things like that. Yeah, so we're really excited, and what we're going to do is we're just going to build on this. So we're going to add promotional programs and different web pages, and we're excited to present this to everybody today. And I'll be, right after this presentation, I'll be writing an email and sending it all to the legacy businesses and informing about the website.
So do you coordinate with other local organizations to get the word out about the opportunity to become a legacy business, or even just tourists that want to come in and, really get the real feel of the community? Do you work with a local chamber or any, visitors affairs or anything like that to get the word out?
To get the word out about legacy businesses, and yeah, we definitely want to do that. The website was really the first step in doing that. We have plans to work with SF Travel for sure. And now that we have this website, we can really do that a lot more. So that's going to be our next step, the next stage. In terms of inviting businesses to apply for the registry, very little. We do that very little because there are so many businesses who want to be on the registry that we've kind of been overwhelmed. So we just let whoever wants to apply. Someday I hope to get to the point where I get through my queue, which is about 35 businesses long right now, and get through the queue, and then we can start inviting businesses. But every now and then there's a business I really like, and I tell them about the registry, and we have a few of those. So, and I know definitely though we work with community groups a lot, Japantown and Ingleside and other community groups and Excelsior. They are definitely working with their businesses to get as many of their businesses on the registry. So that's, I think, where a lot of the applications are coming from. So there's a lot of interest from the neighborhood groups. But yeah, we're definitely going to be looking into how we can expand and get more businesses to the legacy businesses themselves. more business.
Last question, kind of for everyone. Is there any conversation about an oversaturation of legacy businesses where there's just too much then, and it doesn't appear to be as special, I guess, from an outside perspective, not so much for like the acquiring of grants. But then again, if it is so competitive, then, you know, folks go, oh, well, I'm never going to get it because there's 350 businesses that are vying for the same grant. Is there any concern about that, of tightening the parameters to become a legacy business if you're finding that you're just getting too many?
I can respond to that. We've actually had some pressure to loosen up a little bit to get more legacy businesses, and that's primarily because my queue is so long. It actually takes me about 6 months to actually look at an application once I get it in, and I have a whole queue website where I track where they are in the queue. But so people want to see that opened up a little bit more, but I'm hesitant to do that because the process, even though it's a bit difficult for the businesses, really makes it special for them. They go through the whole process of writing that narrative. We establish a whole relationship, and when it's done, it's really a spectacular thing, that final application. So I'm so far keeping it as it is, but there have definitely been no complaints about limiting. There's more wanting to see it open up more.
Others, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our general experience is the same. I mean, I think if anything, people want to see more businesses as eligible. So we've kind of deliberately tried to be as inclusive as possible.
Once you start dispersing funds, I imagine the dynamic will be a little bit different about criteria. But
yeah, it's true. I mean, because we don't have funding associated with it, it makes it a little easier. But we do try to be mindful of, like, what are we gonna, like prepping for the day when we do have financial incentives. So so we try to make sure that we're being fair about who gets recognized and who doesn't.
Okay.
I love
Elizabeth, you have anything else?
I just want to interject a bit. I love seeing the range of heritage documented by the San Francisco site, from things like animal care. I know we have that also in Arlington, recognizing that as a legacy business. Manufacturers, martial arts. It's nice to see sort of an expanded definition of the narrative and the story of what contributes to a community here.
Okay, well, I think we'll close up now. Housekeeping reminders, we are recording this. We'll post it on our YouTube channel. I'll probably have it up on Monday. Just search Planning Webcast on YouTube. We'll also have a PDF of the slide deck available on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. Thanks to the Urban Design and Preservation Division for hosting today's session. Thanks to all of our panelists. This was great. I love it. This is really great examples of good work going around. And folks, make sure you head over to our webcast webpage to register for our upcoming sessions. Again, ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. So with that, everyone have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we'll talk next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.